Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
In your headlines tonight, think before you jump. President Ranil Wickremesinghe softly tells Colombo-based diplomats to consult state actors before reacting to third-hand information. Impunity. While the Council of the EU urges the new Sri Lankan government to work in full compliance with GSP Plus commitments, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights calls on the Sri Lankan government to address impunity to begin genuine reforms. Rationale. Police explains why and how the crackdown on protesters at Presidential Secretariat was implemented. Convene the House. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa calls on the President to summon Parliament on Monday. All this and much more coming up tonight, this Saturday, the 23rd of July, 2022.
විම් දියර මිලිලීටර් 100 ස්මාර්ට් පැක් එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. I'm Indivari Amwatha, joining you tonight on First at 9. President Ranil Wickremesinghe urged foreign diplomats in the country to consult relevant state authorities before they respond to third-hand information on social media, gravely destroying the country's image globally at a time Sri Lanka looks to secure support from friendly nations to overcome the current economic crisis. The head of state made these remarks when he extended an invitation to the Colombo-based diplomats last evening. During the meeting, President Wickremesinghe briefed the envoys on the use of the Triforce's police and police special task force to vacate the Presidential Secretariat.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe had invited Colombo-based foreign envoys last evening to the President's office. It is reported that US Ambassador Julie Chung, Japanese Ambassador Mizukoshi Hideaki, British High Commissioner Sarah Holton, French High Commissioner Eric Lavato, Canadian High Commissioner David McKinnon, and Australian High Commissioner Paul Stephens attended this meeting. Sri Lanka's Attorney General Sanjay Rajaratnam, Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri, and Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Aruna Vijayawardena were also in attendance. During this meeting, the Sri Lankan President had briefed the envoys on the special operation carried out by the Triforces together with the police and the Police Special Task Force to clear protesters occupying the Presidential Secretariat. American Ambassador Julie Chung had expressed concern about the manner in which the security forces moved to remove the protesters from the area. In response, President Wickremesinghe had responded that the US Capitol Police Force had acted in the same manner when protesters breached security lines at the US Capitol building in Washington, D.C. President Ranil Wickremesinghe went on to say that while the Presidential Secretariat is the main administrative building in the country, the building houses important documents. President Wickremesinghe also told the diplomats that the protesters were informed to vacate the Presidential Secretariat at 3 separate occasions on the 14th, 16th and the 21st of this month, adding that the protesters refused to vacate the Presidential Secretariat by 6 am on the 21st of July and instead requested time until 2 pm on the 22nd of July. The head of state went on to say that the time granted to protesters to vacate the premises was extended unreasonably and the request for alternative time was not acceptable, and therefore the Triforces, the police and the STF were deployed as per the law of the land. Meanwhile, President Ranil Wickremesinghe went on to express surprise on how none of the Colombo-based diplomats had taken to Twitter condemning the act of setting his private residence on fire. Further, during the meeting, the Canadian High Commissioner has pointed out that the Bar Association of Sri Lanka had also issued a statement opposing the manner in which the protesters were removed from the Presidential Secretariat. In response, President Ranil Wickremesinghe stated that he himself and the Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri, who were also in attendance at the meeting, are members of the Bar Association and that the statement of the BSL does not reflect the overall stance of the members of the association but it could be the opinion of the current president of the Bar Association. The president has also questioned the diplomats if protesters are allowed to illegally occupy the president's office in their respective countries. The head of state further emphasized that he contributed to the creation of the 1978 Constitution of Sri Lanka and assured the diplomats that he will act and abide by the supreme law of the land. But he requested them to clarify with relevant authorities in future when issuing statements based on social media reports alone, as such could severely damage Sri Lanka's image globally, especially at a time when the island nations work with friendly nations for support to overcome the current crisis.
The Council of the European Union urges the new Sri Lankan government to uphold freedom of opinion and expression and individual rights of citizens of the country and to work in full compliance with GSP Plus commitments. The EU statement follows the military operation in the early hours of Friday near the Presidential Secretariat to clear protesters from the building. In light of the reports of unnecessary violence against protesters, the Council of the European Union said in a statement that the importance of the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association should be upheld. The EU statement went on to say that the urgency of the domestic situation requires the swift establishment and implementation of a structured plan of reforms in order to return the country's economy back onto a sustainable path. In this context, the European Union stressed that it is essential to safeguard human rights and the rule of law while fostering good and inclusive governance and promoting reconciliation efforts. Recalling the more than €1 billion in assistance provided by the EU and its member states to Sri Lanka and the reintroduction of preferential access to the European single market under the GSP Plus scheme in 2017, the EU Council said it expects the new government to work in full compliance with its GSP Plus commitments. The EU will continue to support all efforts in favour of Sri Lankan people aimed at returning to more stability and economic recovery and advancing reconciliation agenda in full respect of democratic values. Recalling the more than €1 billion in assistance provided by the EU and its member states to Sri Lanka and the reintroduction of preferential access to the European single market under the GSP Plus scheme in 2017, the EU Council said it expects the new government to work in full compliance with its GSP Plus commitments. The Office of the UN Human Rights High Commissioner says they're alarmed by the unnecessary use of force by security forces to break up the protest camp near the Presidential Secretariat in Colombo. Making a statement regarding the pre-dawn incident in Colombo, OHCHR spokesperson Jeremy Lawrence said the use of force against peaceful protesters runs contrary to international law. He went on to say that Sri Lankans will rebuild trust with the support of the international community only through broad consultations and dialogue, but the new president and government should address impunity to bring genuine structural and institutional reforms for the benefit of all Sri Lankans.
In the early hours of Friday morning, some 2,000 Sri Lankan police and security forces reportedly stormed a camp near the presidential offices in Colombo. As most of the protesters were in fact sleeping, the military employed unnecessary use of force against them to break up the camp. The camp, in fact, had been due to be dismantled a few hours later. We have received reports that protesters, journalists, and lawyers were beaten. At least 48 people were injured. The use of force against peaceful protesters runs contrary to international law, and we urge authorities to immediately halt the use of such force. All Sri Lankans have the right to freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and the right to participate in public affairs. We have concerns that this crackdown sends a chilling message to peaceful protesters throughout the country. Sri Lanka's economic and political crises cannot be resolved by force. Only through broad consultations and dialogue can Sri Lanka start to rebuild trust and the support of the international community. We hope the new president and his government will address impunity to bring genuine structural and institutional reforms for the benefit of all Sri Lankans.
Now, the police announced today that investigations are underway to identify all those who have visited the presidential secretariat for the crime of trespassing. They also state that measures will be taken to arrest all those who had stolen artifacts and other valuable items from the president's house. Since the protesters occupying the presidential secretariat were removed from the premises yesterday in a joint operation carried out by the Tri-Forces, Police and Special Task Force, they have now set camp at the Gota Gogama protest site. Meanwhile, this morning, part of the Lotus Road and the Gaul Road that were barricaded from the presidential secretariat onwards were reopened. The presidential secretariat has sustained severe damages after being seized and occupied by protesters from the July 9th onwards. The historical building that was established in the year 1978 is found to be destroyed as it was open to public viewing by protesters.
ජනාධිපති ලේකම් කාර්යාලය
The entrance to the presidential secretariat was blocked by the protesters for some time. The Fort Police had requested the protesters on 9 occasions to stop blocking the entrance. However, they disregarded that request. The protesters who entered the presidential secretariat on July 9 were requested to vacate the premises by the OIC of the Colombo Central Police Division, his assistant, and the OIC of the Fort Police on July 14th and 18th. However, they responded aggressively to the request and refused to vacate. As a result, we had a problem with placing our trust with them. The new president doesn't have an office to carry out his duties and responsibilities. The presidential secretariat is the only office. The presidential secretariat is the main administrative building where key decisions are taken for the people of the country. After a new executive president is elected, it is our duty to have the premises cleared up in order to ensure that the officers could carry out their respective duties. We were in a situation where we could not trust their word when they stated that they will vacate the premises on an alternative day. This is why the Tri-Forces and the Police STF worked together to remove the protesters who were illegally stationed at the premises. Even then, we did not use emergency laws. We operated as per common law of the country.
In the meantime, a special media briefing was held today by the police to address the accusations leveled by certain associations, international organizations and foreign missions against the removal of protesters from the presidential secretariat building. Meanwhile, the police stated that an investigation has been launched to identify people who had visited the presidential secretariat for the crime of trespassing. It was further stated that police identified the main suspects who stole valuable historical items from the presidential secretariat as per evidence on CCTV footage. The police added that a broader investigation is underway to arrest all suspects connected. In the meantime, the bomb disposal unit has also launched operations to ascertain as to whether any explosive devices have been placed at the president's official residence and the presidential secretariat. More presidential directives. Will bring you the details when we return after this break.
Big 3.
Welcome back to the news. President Ranil Wickremesinghe directed all Sri Lanka Transport Board depots to dispense fuel to vehicles transporting school children starting from 3 p.m. today. Now, the head of state instructed Minister of Transport Bandula Gunawardena to ensure that measures are taken to dispense fuel to vans and buses transporting school children island-wide. The President gave the directive during a meeting to discuss the fuel crisis and the way forward at the Prime Minister's office earlier today. During the meeting, Education Minister Dr. Susil Premajayantha had brought to the attention of President Wickremesinghe the need for transportation facilities for students returning to school from Monday. Schools are scheduled to resume on the 25th of July, with students expected to come to school only on Mondays, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and to follow online classes on Wednesday and Fridays. Meanwhile, it was also decided to dispense fuel to people engaged in the fisheries, tourism and agriculture sectors through depots of the Sri Lanka Transport Board. The National Fuel Pass pilot project was tested at select refilling stations across all districts today, with the Energy Minister saying that in Colombo the system was tested successfully. The National Fuel Pass system was implemented in Colombo last week. According to Ministers Kanchana Wijesekara, fuel dispensation under the Fuel Pass system will be implemented island-wide as soon as the test run is complete. Currently, both state-run Sipetco and privately owned LIOC dispense fuels according to the days assigned to the last digit of vehicle number plates.
As a solution to the existing shortage of fuel and to manage the limited stocks of fuel that are available in the country, the Ministry of Power and Energy introduced two methods of dispensing fuel across the island. One such method currently implemented is the issuance of fuel per day assigned to the last digit of the vehicle number plate. Under this system, fuel is issued to vehicle owners with number plates ending with 0, 1 and 2 on Tuesdays and Saturdays, while those with vehicle number plates ending with 3, 4 and 5 can get fuel on Thursdays and Sundays. Vehicles with number plates ending with 6, 7, 8 and 9 meanwhile can obtain fuel on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. The system is currently in effect at both LIOC and Sipetco filling stations under a fuel cap. Motorbikes can pump fuel worth 1,500 rupees, while three-wheelers can get fuel worth 2,000 rupees. The maximum amount of fuel allowed to be dispensed to other vehicles meanwhile is capped at 7,000 rupees. The second method in place to dispensing fuel is the National Fuel Pass, which has had over 3 million registrations so far, began testing at some fuel stations in Colombo. The system allows vehicle owners a fuel quota every week, which is made available upon registration. Vehicle owners will also be provided with a QR code unique to their vehicle number, which must be produced at the refilling station before obtaining fuel. Power and Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara said that the fuel pass system will be implemented island-wide once the testing phase is complete. The fuel pass system was tested today at selected filling stations across all 25 districts of the country. In the meantime, an individual was arrested by police at a filling station in Nochiyagama in Anuradhapura for unruly behavior. He had attempted to obtain fuel from the refilling station even though the last digit of his number plate was not eligible to obtain fuel on the day. Meanwhile, a team of police officers from the Passara police station have launched a special investigation to identify individuals who have set up false number plates.
Now, the Railways Department announced that the revised train ticket fares will come into effect today. The Railway Department had previously announced that the increased train ticket fares would be applied from midnight yesterday, as per the Gazette notification issued in this regard. The minimum train ticket fare is increased from 10,000 rupees to 10 rupees to 20 rupees. Concurrent with the revision of railway fares for passenger transport, the fares for freight transport were also increased. However, the Station Masters Union said its members would continue to issue train tickets at existing rates. Speaking to AdaDerana on the matter, a spokesperson of the Railways Department said refraining from implementing the revised train fares, which is announced in a special Gazette notification, will be considered unlawful. The spokesperson said the department is authorized to take legal action for not implementing the railway fare revision. A Gazette Extraordinary has been issued appointing Vajra Abegunawardena to the United National Party's national list parliamentary seat left vacant after Ranil Wickremesinghe was elected to the office of President. The Gazette was published by the Election Commission pursuant to the powers conferred by the Section 64, subsection 5 of the Parliamentary Elections Act No. 1 of 1981 and the provisions of the Constitution. Earlier this week, Secretary-General of Parliament Dhammika Dasanayake informed the chairman of the Election Commission in writing that a vacancy has been created after Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn in as the President of Sri Lanka. President Wickremesinghe informed Secretary-General of Parliament on Wednesday that he resigned as Member of Parliament upon assuming duties as the head of state. Now, the main opposition, the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, has requested Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena to convene the House on Monday to take up a debate on the attack on peaceful protesters and the current situation in the country. In a letter directed to the Premier, Chief Opposition Whip MP Lakshman Kiriyalla said that the attack on the Gota Gogama protest site at Gorface Green by the troops in the early hours of Friday is a blow to democracy. The incident has been vehemently condemned by the international community and it can damage the country's image further, according to the Samagi Jana Balawegaya leader Sajith Premadasa. Meanwhile, the economic crisis faced by Sri Lanka at the moment will exacerbate owing to yesterday's incident, the main opposition stresses. The European Commission gave Hungary a final month to address its concerns about the rule of law before asking European Union governments to suspend some of the funds Hungary is to get under the bloc's 2021-2027 budget. Now, the new deadline is part of an EU process called the conditionality mechanism, meant to protect the EU's financial interests against breaches of rule of law by an EU government. It is separate from other procedures over the rule of law that the EU has launched against Hungary. The Commission believes EU money is at risk in Hungary because of what it says is corruption, which can take the form of tenders for EU-funded projects in which only one bidder, usually linked to the ruling party, takes part. The EU executive has also concerns about the independence of the judiciary, media and non-governmental organizations in the Central European country. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban had in the past dismissed the EU and US concerns over corruption in Hungary. But top Hungarian officials have now said that Budapest was willing to work with the Commission to address the concerns. Well, that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9 on AdaDerana 24. Thanks for tuning in. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.